Welcome everyone for making it here on a Saturday and joining us for this discussion. I know our hearts and minds are quite heavy at this time with so much changes at the national level, and all that have serious implications for our everyday lives. But your presence here is an affirmative act to do something contrary to those in power, because changes ultimately must start locally. So my name is Siyan Wong. I'm the painter, an artist in this exhibition. Alvin Sang, who's behind the camera right now, is my partner, and we created the installations together, and he is a filmmaker, so he created the installation as you come in. So I'm happy to be able to shine a spotlight on people who collect cans and bottles for income. This exhibition is all about seeing them. But first of all, I gotta thank the entire team at Charities. If you don't know Charities, I've learned that this space has a lot of power. It creates a lot of shows and it's very supportive of artists like myself. And for such a small team of people, I'm amazed with the kind of work that they're producing. So I encourage you to support them. I want to start with the 4-minute video, and then I will introduce you to the panelists here today. I would say panelists, but I would really like to hold this as a discussion among us about what we can do to make this community and all communities in New York State better for all people. Thank you.
On my walks around the city, I see many of the homeless and elderly going through the garbage in search of cans and bottles to sell. I find it heart-wrenching that in a city as affluent as ours, even the elderly have to sort through other people's garbage just to make ends meet. Since I started painting the canners and homeless in 2013, I began to notice more elderly Chinese collecting cans in my neighborhood. Many are women. Over the years, I got to know some of them, and I want to tell their story. My solo painting exhibition, Lives of Three Canners, share the story of 3 Chinese elderly immigrants in New York City who collected cans to supplement their income. This 3-week exhibition shared their dignity as workers and was a space for people to get to know 3 low-income elderly Chinese immigrants, Choi Yi, Asim, and He Ping, as fellow New Yorkers. It created the opportunity for conversations about our city and our society. I welcomed 3 high schools to the exhibition. Through these paintings, students recognized their own families, their homes, and even reflected on their parents' struggles.
My mom, she also collected cans. I liked how the folding table reminded me of my grandma's house and like all the stuff under it because that's also how she stores things. And then the calendar, my grandma and my great-grandma, they always keep calendars everywhere.
I also moderated a workshop with 3 canner advocates, Jean Rice, Lynn Lewis, and Ryan Castalia. We discussed who canners are, what are involved in converting the cans to cash, and what are needed to be done to protect them.
Canners come from all walks of life, backgrounds, lifestyles. It's hard to pigeonhole them in terms of one demographic.
To be a successful canner, time management is essential because you're competing against other people that pick up cans. And you're also competing against sanitation because if you're not on time, those recycled containers will go in the back of the sanitation truck and crushed up to be later deposited in a landfill somewhere that we're paying for.
I love your work, Siyan, so much because it shows folks who are canning as workers.
The goal for my exhibitions is to create space to share experiences so that as a society, we move forward with policies that are driven by knowledge and empathy. I hope viewers open up their hearts to doing more for people who are facing injustices, whether blatant or subtle, because they are poor.
So this is the last exhibition I had in New York City, and I focused on 3 canners. My first exhibition in 2019 was more generally just people I met on the streets. So a little bit about myself. I'm primarily a self-taught painter, born in China but raised in New York City. I'm a first-generation immigrant. So my subjects are the working poor, the homeless, and women and the elderly, the people who inspire me visually. So since 2018, I've been exhibiting about the people who collected cans for redemption. So my projects are fiscally sponsored by different institutions, including it's fiscally sponsored by New York Foundation for the Arts, but supported by grants from the New York State Council for the Arts, Asian American Giving Circle, the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council, in collaboration with the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs. So I'm very grateful for that. So we have with us today who I call an ecological engineer, Gene Rice, who you saw in the film. He passed away 2 weeks ago, but this is a term he coined it. He sees that people collect the cans are actually providing a real service to society because the cans and bottles that doesn't get collected just end up being a landfill that we all have to pay for. So I would like to introduce anyone who collects cans as an ecological engineer because I think he's right about that. But since most people are more familiar with the word canners now, I still use that term. So today we're joined by Lonnie. He lives locally, and I just met Lonnie 2 days ago, and I'm so happy that Lonnie is coming to join us today and share with us his experience. And to my left is Wayne Castalia. He is the executive director of Shuri Can, and you also saw him in the film. He's an artist and advocate. And Shuri Can is the only nonprofit redemption center in New York State at the moment, and Shuri Can is located in Brooklyn. He uses approaches learned through the nonprofit world, and using that and activism, experimental theater practice, and from the community of canners he serves, Ryan seeks to create the conditions for a more compassionate and sustainable world to emerge. And further to my left is Laurie Konwinski. She has served as the Justice and Peace Ministry coordinator at the Catholic Charities in Ithaca for over 15 years. She is a lifelong environmentalist and is an active member of Extinction Rebellion. In Laurie's work, she educates and advocates and activates people on environmental issues and other social concerns, central to the Catholic social teaching. The Bigger, Better Bottle Bill is for her a compelling policy that addresses both care for God's creation and care for God's people, especially those on the margins. And further to my left is Blair Horner. Blair has served in various roles at the New York Public Interest Research Group for the past 4 decades, including executive director. Blair is currently the senior policy advisor. In his over 45 years of work with NYPIRG, He has overseen community organizing activities and directed statewide issues campaigns. He has lobbied on a wide range of issues and written scores of reports examining issues including environmental protection, redistricting, campaign finance, political ethics, and so on. Today, we are specifically tapping into Blair's lobbying and organizing experiences around the Bigger, Better bottle bill. So thank you for everyone joining me today. So to start, we're going to spend the first about 50 minutes talking here, and then we'll open up for questions and answers, and just basically a broader discussion. So let's start with the obvious questions on our minds about the ecological engineers. So Lonnie,
Yes.
if you may, I'll start with you. Where did you grow up, and where do you currently live?
Currently, I'm living in Tompkins County Actions. They have a place called Chartwell, and I've been there for about a year and a half waiting on my Section 8 to come through, and then I'll be moving into a place where I can have my son, some suitable housing. I don't have any complaints. Tompkins County has quite the system when it comes to taking care of the marginalized and people that are pushed towards the margin. So I don't have any complaints there. I grew up in Tampa, Florida. Now, the first time I ever thought about deposits and canning was I was really young. We had those 10-cent 16-ounce bottles that we used to be able to get, and my parents encouraged me to go out and find them wherever people would throw them down because it was actual viable money. And back then you could get 60 cents and it was 2 gallons of gas. So 6 bottles equaled 2 gallons of gas, and thereby my dad could go to work and come home and actually make the money to pay whatever bills were necessary. So canning's always been a part of my life, and so yeah, that's about it.
And so how long have you been collecting and redeeming cans for more like a living?
Well, here in Ithaca for the past 2 years, because I was given a diagnosis of PTSD because of the wonderful life that I've lived, and so I wasn't able to work anymore. So I applied for disability, and then that fell through. They deny you for some reason a number of times, and then you reapply and keep going back through DSS and getting the monthly stipend that they give you, and it's just not enough to make ends meet, let alone eat or survive. So I decided to go out and start getting cans. And luckily, another thing about Tompkins County and Ithaca is that they have a lot of people here, and those people are consuming deposited drinks all the time. So you find nickels everywhere, and so I just decided to start doing that, and I'm surviving. I'm not I'm not going to be able to drive a Mercedes home, but a shopping cart full of cans sometimes is almost better than a Mercedes for me.
So one more question. So tell us about your day, right? What time do you start your day? Where do you go find cans and bottles to collect, and how much do you make, and what's the distance that you have to travel before you would say, okay, it's time to get this redeemed? So
it depends on what day of the week it is. I like to take the late night route because the bars close, and then there's, from between where I live, which is on Meadow Street, to the Commons, there's several streets. During the week, I think Tuesdays and Wednesdays are the bigger days that people put out their recycling from their houses. So I can go straight down Buffalo towards the Commons, and usually find enough to make $5 or $10, and then around the Commons I usually find a few dollars here and there, and then I find interesting stuff in the trash and in the recycling all the time. I found a laptop, actually 2 laptops. One was a MacBook, one was a Dell, and they were perfectly functional machines. So I took those and sold them, and I was able to actually have a meal that day. I should have maybe kept one of the computers, but.
And what's the distance then?
Oh, I'd say probably about 1.5 miles, 2 miles of a radius. Sometimes I'll stay on this end, on the west end of town. especially if there's craziness going on towards the commons, any of the festivals, I kind of try to avoid. I'll hit them, but it's usually late night because they'll shut everything down, and then there's like large dumpsters, the rollaway dumpsters that they'll have, and they'll be full of cans and other garbage and detritus as well. But it's worth it. If you get built up to where you have $10 or $20. But the only real problem with that is that they closed all the redemption centers here and locally. There's one in town, but it's almost out towards Newfield. I mean, it's on the road towards Newfield, and it's a good mile and a half, 2 miles to get there. So we're stuck with Wegmans and or Walmart for right now, and that can get problematic because the machines break down and or they don't have somebody to come and repair it right away. All of those things are factors in whether I get to eat that day or not, and it's a little concerning sometimes, but I have faith that we'll be able to find somebody to reopen one of those redemption centers. The one over here, right here on the west end, was perfect. I mean, that thing, they ran for a number of years, and then they shut down, and a lot of the canners were like, I don't know what to do. So that's one of the concerns that is immediate. It's an immediate concern to try to get either more or a nonprofit or any kind of those redemption centers would help. It would be great for the community and people that are marginalized at large to be able to try to, knock that mountain out of a molehill that's made, knock it down so that we have level ground to operate on. And other than that, that's about my typical day.
Well, this is a good segue to Ryan. You run the only non-profit redemption center in Brooklyn, in New York State. What do you think about how is it going there, and what's the population that you serve, and what is the value of Sure We Can?
Well, how's it going? I guess I'll start with. I mean, it's really challenging for redemption centers right now. I mean, what the situation Lonnie's describing is happening all over New York. Because the business model that redemption centers rely upon is structured in the law, and the earnings that allow independent redemption centers to exist can't be adjusted without the law being adjusted. The last time that happened was in 2009. The cost of operating a business across New York State, especially in New York City, has risen dramatically in that time. So accessing rent, paying staff, all the labor that is involved in running a redemption center, it's just harder and harder to perform. So canners across New York are having the experience that Lonnie's describing, where venues are closing and access to the system is harder and harder. As a nonprofit, we have access to other revenue streams through private donations or foundations or other grants that mean we can both stay open in Brooklyn, which of course is not a cheap place to operate, but also offer a more expansive scope of services. We were founded by New York City canners who were determined to create a context where they and their peers could sort of have an experience that, or at least fill the gaps in the experience of doing this work, where in addition to all the logistical challenges that Lonnie's describing, there's a lot of stigma and judgment and that is part of that marginalization, in addition to the economic challenges, right? Especially in New York City, where most of the people we're working with might not speak English or might have some kind of disability like Lonnie has that makes it hard for them to access traditional employment. They might be older, they might have mobility issues. So our organization was founded in order to create a context where, in addition to accessing reliable service that was more efficient and effective than a reverse vending machine at a grocery store, canners could also find community and dignity and peer-to-peer experience where they could recognize their struggles in others, organize in order to create a collective voice that could help impact those struggles and improve conditions. At the beginning, it was really just like, let's create a space where canners can belong, where like other canners are there to say, I see you, I support you, I'm here with you, your struggles are my struggles. And now we've grown to the place where we're able to get more involved in these broader struggles and have hope for real institutional transformation. But it really started with just creating any kind of space where canners could be free from some of these obstacles and challenges that Lonnie's already described for us.
What's the difference between a canner, ecological engineer, coming to a redemption center versus going to a supermarket to redeem their cans?
It's a night and day difference. I mean, Lonnie already sort of described it very compellingly, but RVMs are the reverse vending machines, are the machines that most drugstores, supermarkets, other places that sell beverages will have installed. They are prone to the issues that Lonnie's described. They break easily. Also, they will only accept the brands that are sold at whatever store is hosting them. So it just means if you're a canner, and say you're a canner earning their whole livelihood, you might have to collect 1,000, 2,000 more cans in a day. It's just not feasible to redeem all those one at a time in a reverse vending machine. It's a huge time imposition. They often have volume limits, which means you might have to go to more than one. So a redemption center, by contrast, can redeem any brand at any volume very quickly. So for a canner, it's essential in terms of just providing the workflow that'll support their lifestyle and livelihood so that they can get back out there and working. Because again, 5 cents at a time, it adds up quite slowly. So it's really important that they can spend as much time as they want to, let's say, out there collecting and gathering that material. And a redemption center makes it much easier, streamlined, faster to get through and get paid for your work.
So one more questions for you about the from your experience. Who are the people who actually come and redeem the cans? What's their background? Are they primarily homeless? The age range, nationality, race? Tell us a little bit about the population that come to show weekend.
Well, sure. I get asked this question a fair amount, and my sort of standard response is it's very hard to generalize really broadly about canners. It's an incredibly diverse community, both in terms of ethnic background, social situation, lifestyle, approach to the work, level of work, ability. All these things can vary quite widely. At Sure We Can specifically, we're in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. So we're a majority Spanish-speaking community. That's not the case, let's say, across even New York City, much less across the state. But that's our community. It's about 55% Spanish-speaking, then maybe 22% Chinese-speaking, and then another 22% Black American. So quite diverse, largely Spanish-speaking. What I think ties them all together, first of all, is that they're workers, right? These are all people who are working really hard to make ends meet, to supplement their income, whatever, doing this really arduous labor that benefits all of us. And then I think the second thing that really ties them all together are obstacles and challenges. These are folks who in general face some kind of potentially insurmountable obstacle to traditional employment, and yet they have this working spirit, so turn to other avenues for work, informal work, that allows them to meet their needs. So whether they've arrived at that position because they've come to this country and they can't speak the language, because they don't have legal status to work, because something has changed in their personal life that means they want to change the rhythm of their life, they want to be their own boss, they want to work outside, they don't have the physical ability to do this or that. It's a low barrier way to work, and that is, I mean, in a society like ours that is extremely institutionalized, it's so essential that these kinds of opportunities exist, because it means that folks who get marginalized out of that institutional context have very few options, actual supportive options that can support a lifestyle, right, a livelihood. And though canning is not, I would say, sufficiently remunerative, like on a dignity level, it is a way for people to work and access some degree of income. That is not to say that it's even close to adequate. I mean, one thing I'll mention is that in New York City, we did a study in 2023 that showed that New York City canners earn around $5 an hour on average. So that's less than a third of the minimum wage in New York City, not even close to to a living wage. So that's a huge reason why we're pushing as hard as we can for this deposit to go up. It hasn't risen in over 40 years. So if you can imagine working a job for over 40 years and not getting a single raise in all that time, you can get a slight sense of what the experience is like to work as a canner.
Thank you. I'm going to skip over Laurie. I'm going to go straight to the policy that Blair can share with us. So there are currently 2 bills in the New York State legislature. One is in the Assembly, one is in the Senate. And they will essentially, in my summary, right, expand the current New York State bottle bill to 1, include wine, spirits, hot cider, and most non-carbonated beverages. And 2, increase the deposit from 5 cents to 10 cents. And 3, require the use of specific amounts of recycled materials in plastic, aluminum, and glass beverage containers. And lastly, and 4, provide some support to redemption centers like Sherry can. So can you tell us a little more about this bill besides these that I've summarized?
Well, I think you've summarized the bill quite well. The issue for us is, I think, political more than it is anything else. The industries that are affected hate the legislation. When we worked on this in 1981 and 82, 81, 82, to get the original version of the bill passed, the supermarkets hate it because they have to deal with the redeemed deposits. The companies hate it because they don't want to be on the hook for the waste that they're generating. And they hire lobbyists. Ronnie doesn't have one, other than Ryan, I guess, now. And so the issue on the bill is, you look at a law that's been on the books for 45 years, what can you do to make it better? So I think we would all agree that was worth a nickel in 1982 is not worth a nickel today.
Correct.
And in fact, it's more like a penny plus. That's really the purchasing value of a nickel from 1982. Yet it hasn't changed. Why? Politics. There are all these new products that are now available for beverage containers. Gatorade, iced teas. You've all seen them. And yet the current law just covers carbonated beverages and water. Why just carbonated beverages? Because back in 1982, these other containers didn't exist. Why hasn't it been modernized? Politics. You heard earlier about the way the business model is set up around redemption centers. It's based on a system that was put in place in 1982, was updated in 2009, and for those of you who can do quick math, 2009 was a while ago too. That hasn't been changed. And so despite the fact that costs have gone up for redemption centers, the minimum wage being the most obvious thing, which I think most people would think is a good idea to raise the minimum wage, but if you don't increase the system to work better for redemption centers, they go out of business, they don't exist in Ithaca anymore. So the issue is really about, and it's the same problem we had in 1982, how do you mobilize grassroots public interest in this issue against well-resourced industries that hire lobbyists to stop you? And I can tell you for sure, there are far more lobbyists against this bill than there are at the Capitol lobbying for the bill, state Capitol. So that, while I didn't get into too much about the specifics of the bill, it's been covered very well. You all have observed the law. It's not like we're talking about something you've never heard of before. The idea is to expand to all beverage containers outside of dairy, non-dairy, 100% fruit juice, 100% vegetable juice containers. All of the others would be in. Increase the deposit from a nickel to a dime. It really should be 15 cents if you did inflation factor alone. But I don't think anyone would complain. I don't think Ronnie would complain. Ronnie wouldn't complain if it went to a dime. And then to try to do more in the law to help the redemption centers. Those are really the big component parts. And there's this larger issue that New York State, the country, the world faces, which is what do you do with your garbage, your trash? And landfills fill up. Some of you are probably familiar with what's going on about Seneca? Those landfills are that landfill may be the tallest point in upstate New York pretty soon. Why? Well, we have a linear system of trash, right, of packaging. It gets made, gets sold, goes to the garbage. The idea is to try to create a circular system where the containers, the packaging that's made, goes back to the entity that made it. Therefore, you have less to dispose of. And so that this new bottle bill talks about encouraging refillable containers, setting recycling standards for the types of containers over time, and it's paired with a second bill to help reduce packaging in New York State to create the circular economy that I described. As you can imagine, the same industries that hate the bottle bill hate that too. But there's a real problem. All of New York's landfills will be running to the end of their permit or their expected lifespan within the next 15 to 20 years. Where will the garbage go? Right now, too much of it goes to marginalized communities in the United States. Way too much of it goes to other countries filled with people that don't have any say over the garbage and then have to live with it. So it's not only an environmental issue, it's a larger moral issue. And the bottle bill, ironically, is the best example of how to do it right if you modernize it. And so in terms of the legislation, Senator May, for those of you who are in the area know, Senator May from Syracuse has introduced the bill in the Senate, and Assemblywoman Deborah Glick, who chairs the Environmental Conservation Committee in the Assembly, has introduced it. And I encourage you to let your elected officials know that you want them to support it. I'll stop there, sorry.
Oh no, this is great.
I was filibustering. too much of a product of being up at the state capitol.
So I'm curious, right? The legislations are very common sense. I don't think anyone would say, oh yeah, let's not do it, right? Like I think you talk to people will just like pass it, get it done already, right? What is the real obstacle? I know they're lobbyists, but like, what is the obstacle? What can people do?
Well, you heard, and maybe you can do the math. I've been doing this a long time, so I'm sort of a dinosaur in the age of mammals, right? It's like a Loch Ness equivalent in Albany. It's all about public pressure. If you have organized money, the only way to win is through organized people. And so the complaints that you hear are, well, we don't like to have unredeemed containers in our stores. It takes up too much space, they stink, and we don't want it. So they don't want to have that. That's one argument. The other you often hear is, well, if you raise the deposit from a nickel to a dime, that's a tax on people. And of course, then I say back to them, what are the taxes that I can get back? It's crickets in terms of the answer. The problem is, at a certain level on that particular issue, is the people I'm talking to are affluent legislators and staffers who, for them, the 1 penny equivalent of the deposit nowadays is not a big deal, so they get rid of it. They don't think that the people who actually bring it back are the people that need the money. And so it's not a tax on them. It may be a tax on the staff or the legislators that don't feel like getting the deposit back. New York has about 68% redemption rate on its unredeemable containers. A lot of that is because of people like Ronnie. A lot of that is because of the work of groups like Sure We Can that make the system work better. So the arguments are sort of on a policy level, this is a pain in the neck. That's what Pepsi and Coke will tell you. We don't like it, we don't like it, we don't like it. The people that have stores will tell you, we don't like to use up the space. And then there's the policy argument, which is, oh, no one redeems these things anyway because we don't. We meaning. So those are the three. You can knock them all down substantively, but the problem we face is they hire 10 lobbyists for every one of us that's at the state capitol. Ironically, of course, when you get out to the community, to your point, there's a hell of a lot more people that think this is a good idea that don't. And all we have to do is activate them, and I think we can win the day. But again, work for NYPIRG, so I'm an eternal optimist.
So, Laurie, in your work at the Catholic Charities, what's your contact with folks living on the margins? And what's the significance in your view that the bigger, better bottle bill, and why it should get passed now?
So we live in this wealthy upstate county, significantly better off in many ways than the folks around us in other upstate counties, right? If you look at a lot of the data. But we also know we've got a big affordability crisis. Housing is crazy, whether you're a renter or a homeowner. Everybody knows groceries are up. But always, I mean, as long as I've lived here, and that's 25 years or so, it's not like in the middle of this affluence, we don't also have people very much struggling. So Catholic Charities has been around here for close to 30 years, and in the country for well over 100. But here in Tompkins County, clearly never at a lack of something to do, never at a lack of folks needing our services. So we have people coming in our doors, 4 days a week or 5 days a week with different kinds of struggles, but certainly affordable housing is a big one. People trying to access services like mental health, like addiction recovery, never enough access to those kind of services that can help people really turn their lives around, right, and become more stable and able to be employed. People's lives can be so tenuous, whether you're here in sort of inner city Ithaca, in an Ithaca neighborhood, or out in Groton somewhere, right? So you might have different struggles. Transportation, maybe. Heaven help you try to get a job if you're outside of Ithaca, to drive into Ithaca. I mean, TCAT's great, but boy, if you're working some night shift or something, forget about it, right? I mean, buses just don't go that far out, right, to some of those outgoing neighborhoods. So then you've got the whole expense of a car. If you don't have child care money, and there is some through the state, but never enough, how on earth are you supposed to leave your kids somewhere where they aren't safe? So it's the same thing, I think, that we see across the country in terms of poverty, and then with the special circumstances here, I think, because there is such affluence and also poverty, cheek and jowl. People's lives, as I said, so tenuous. Could I get help getting the bald tires on my car fixed so I can safely drive my kids to school and get myself to work? So, I mean, what choice do you have there, right? Not really. You're going to drive on bald tires till you get a little extra help from somebody. Frozen pipes because you're in a mobile home, so-called, doesn't really move anywhere, but the mobile home with no insulation, and you're responsible for it. It's not the landlord. Where are you going to get the money, right? So, I mean, things that for many of us wouldn't cause a crisis can just tumble people right down into crisis and eviction and all of that. So we certainly see folks from all kinds of situations like that, again, rural and urban, coming into Catholic Charities. And this bill specifically, I was asking some of my colleagues, about folks they know, that folks they've served who are canners, which when I first heard it, I thought it meant like you put up peaches, like a cooperative extension. So that's a New York City issue. I mean, term. But anyway, so we're going to say canners or ecological engineers. But one of my colleagues mentioned a lady, not from the U.S., but living here, probably limited English, older gal. And yeah, like this is a way to make ends meet for her, right? This is a way to, I suppose, have that extra for whatever the food pantry doesn't provide for you, or you're trying to pay the heat bill, whatever it is. So we certainly have folks, working in this kind of work that come into Catholic Charities. One of many reasons why I really like this bill, to your question, why should it pass? For all these reasons we've heard. But there is something very fundamental about having people, individuals, us, recognize some responsibility for what we're doing to God's good earth, right? So something as simple as not tossing a can in the garbage or into the inlet, right? Even worse. But actually having to take a little bit of responsibility for putting it back into a system of circular economy. I think that's citizenship, right? Or that's being a good member of society. And in Catholic social teaching, we might call it the common good. That for me might be easier to just toss this stuff, but that's not the common good. The common good is what's good for all of us, and what's good for all of us is that all of us take some responsibility for what we're doing to the earth. This is just a little piece of it. There's so many more things, right, that we all do and could do. But I think the planting of that seed in people's minds that there's something that they can do and that they ought to do and that they have a responsibility. And by the way, we got a little financial incentive for you to do it. So that'll maybe make you more likely to do it. That's good. That is helping people do the right thing. And one other issue, we are here in the Finger Lakes and water is so important to us. And the amount of trash in our waterways is terrible. And worst of all, of course, plastic, in terms of the microplastics that get into the water that then get into all of us and every other living thing. So, that's another piece of it that maybe for me, it's easier to throw the plastic bottle on the floor, on the ground, in the trash. But the common good tells me I don't want my neighbor who's expecting a baby to have microplastics in her breast milk. I don't want people, I'm a cancer survivor, my husband's a cancer survivor, I don't want people who've already been ill to have one more carcinogen running around in their bodies and potentially making them ill again. So again, that's all about thinking of it as what's the common good. One more little thing we haven't mentioned, but it's a nice thing to remember. These redemption centers, very important for all of us, important for Lonnie and other ecological engineers, but another thing that they do is they support local charities. So that when you take your bottles or cans back in there, you might see that there's, do you want to donate this towards First Baptist Church or Girl Scout Troop number 372? They raise tens of thousands of dollars for charities. The Boy Scouts do can drives, they pick up trash and turn them in. So it's a thing that the redemption centers just do out of the goodness of their heart in sort of a civic duty of, keeping track. Okay, well, I won't give you back your $3.20, but I'll put it, in the tally for the Girl Scouts. Wegmans isn't doing that, right? But the redemption centers, and we hear it again and again from redemption center owners, it's part of what they do for their communities. And, what a good thing. It's like an easy way for people who might not be big philanthropists, might not have a lot of money to share, but it's a way to help people share a little bit of their wealth with a good cause. And again, anything that helps people be good in the world, to put more goodness into the world, I think we should support.
Thank you. I'm going to circle back to Lonnie. I'm going to ask you, I know we're having this conversation and really you experiencing it, and I wanted to ask you, what would you like people to understand about you and people who are living in similar circumstances, and what is the significance when there's understanding, in your opinion?
Well, the most succinct thing I could say about it is that there is a lot of stigma involved in, being homeless or, marginalized to a point. Because I did about a year on the street. I was working full time and I could not find a place to live. I was making $1,000 a week and there was nothing to rent. I could not find adequate housing to both. I'm a single father and my son is here in Tompkins County. That's why I'm here in the first place. But I could not find a single place to rent that I would have had my son even visit. Even with Chartwell, it's problematic. So that's the main thing that I'm facing is just being pushed further towards the margin, and you know, I'm looking for the hand grip to try to pull myself up out of it. And it, you know, when they closed the redemption centers, it was like, oh, look, there you go, you don't have that anymore, and that was a big blow for us to lose those redemption centers. And that's mostly what we're facing as a community. Is we have, I mean, I don't want to sit here and say the sky's falling, but you know, there is somewhat of a crisis with the poor and marginalized people, that they need to be seen as people. That's a big thing. Is like when you're pushing your cart full of cans up to the Wegmans, there are a lot of people that just turn their nose up at you and they judge you and whatever else. But then at the same time, I've had people approach me as I'm coming up through the parking lot and say, hey, I've got these 3 bags of cans that I don't feel like dealing with. Can you take them for me? And you know, that would double my money for the day, because you know, it was kindness. That's really all that people are looking for, is kindness, and also to be recognized as, you know, the part of society, or like a human being, even like, you know, being close to the margin. It's hard to find your way out of that, you know. It's, so anything that can bring you, I like it, they call it a redemption center too, because it's kind of like you feel redeemed a little bit. Other than that, you know, I think that's mainly it, is that just the stigma of being homeless or judged, you know, like, because they'll put you in a number of categories when people see you and they don't know you. So they'll see you and they'll judge you by your appearance. And then so you get pushed into these, oh, that person's a drug addict, or this person's that, and da, 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 and there's really no redemption there. I mean, you can't, you know, you're facing an insurmountable problem there from the side of the people that are in the street. But, you know, I'm thinking that Tompkins County has enough of an ear to the street and to the people that we'll be able to figure something out here. And if they do pass this law, it's going to really help. I mean, initially there's probably going to be a little bit of problem here and there, because people are going to, you know, new people that have never recycled or done canning, they're going to be in droves out there trying to do the same thing. But, you know, that'll fall off after a while, because most people's tenacity is outweighed by their exuberance. So, you know, you just have to keep at it and do what you can. So that's about it.
Thank you, Lonnie. We appreciate your perspective on this.
Thank you.
Sharing this. Well, that's all the questions I have, and I'm going to open this up for discussions. Any questions you want to have, share with the panelists? Yes.
Hi, I'm Carol Doolittle. I think we know each other from Albany. My husband and I own a small winery in the Finger Lakes. You might know where I'm going, but I'm not. Lonnie, about how many glass containers would you say you pick up compared to plastic?
I actually try to avoid the glass because of the weight of it, and there's a little bit of danger to it because it can shatter and become sharp and stuff like that. And the people at the redemption center do not like bloody anything, so it's, you know, it's kind of, so I usually avoid glass unless it's all I can find, and if that's all I can find, then I'll fill up a shopping cart and go with it. But it's generally less of an incentive to get the glass because of the weight and other factors. So plastic bottles and cans, that's really what I'm going for mostly. And then because we have to go to Wegmans, there are certain brands, like whatever they sell at Aldi or other stores, that they don't accept there. So then I'll avoid getting those altogether, because I don't know, everybody in the street knows that the Walmart redemption center is spotty at best. You know, their machines don't work, and they have out-of-town people that are maintaining them. And so if that machine's down, you can't get rid of those cans, and then you're stuck with all this material that you can't do anything with. And so to answer your question, I try to stay away from the glass, but I do take it when I can or when I have to. So, yeah.
And I think that the redemption should go up to at least 15 cents. That's what Rachel said, that 5 cents in 82 was worth 15 cents now. And in fact, in Canada, it's 20 cents for the redeemables. And Judith Eng said 25 cents. So why are we stopping at 10?
Politics.
We have a question for the sponsors, not us. It's just that I think they believe that. I mean, look how hard it is for us to get it to a dime.
Yeah, really. Well,
So
it's more than that. It's more than a dime, I think.
But it's the pressure back. I mean, we get a lot of pushback that this is a tax increase, and it's not a tax increase, as we all know. So the more you make the jump,
Right.
the harder it is to sell.
Yeah, and I've heard, you can buy a bottle and pay your 5 cents, but it's hard to get it back if you're homebound to collect your 5 cents back, which I believe there are mobile redemption centers, aren't there now?
Oh,
Redemption centers, but mobile redemption trucks.
Yes,
We don't have them
very-
in Truman, in Ithaca though, do we?
I'm not sure, but I imagine not. I mean, that's a model is popular in places like, for example, there are no redemption centers at all in the borough of Manhattan in New York City, but there are thousands of canners, and usually it's trucks from Westchester or Long Island that come through to do that pickup. So it is a common model, yeah.
It'd be nice to have more of that. And the other part of it is, I know the pushback from the wineries in particular, is the fact that wine bottles can be refilled. They can be washed, sterilized, and refilled. Take glass out of it. So therefore, that's one of your pushbacks in Albany. I'm sorry to say, I'm a member of it, but in favor of the bill and work with Senator May and Assemblymember Glick. And then, of course, the other problem is the recycler hauler here, Tomra, and the RVMs. What is it, Jane Eddy, a redemption center owner in Washington County, said that Tomra, who owns the RVMs, and they think they rent for $1,200 a month, which is pretty expensive, would like to be the redemption center in New York State. And so they, as a big business, are hurting small redemption centers who are private. And I personally think they should get more than 6 cents, which I think is the proposed take that they would have. I think what I'm saying is, from a producer's point of view, from a small producer's point of view, is that the bill has got so many good parts to it, but there are so many issues that don't seem to be addressed separately. So I'm not speaking against it. We're just asking that there be some amendments made, and I'd be happy to work with anybody on that. It's because this is important, as is the extended producer responsibility, which is other legislation I think you may be referring to, which we also totally agree with. But there are some issues, especially for small producers, small craft producers, your neighbors basically in New York State. I think we need to be, I'm speaking to myself now, need to be considered too, that this is good. We agree with it, but not if it's going to hurt us also. In terms of the canners, I love the name, and it's weird. Thank you for doing it, seriously.
I wouldn't eat if I didn't, so.
Can you tell us your name?
Yeah, my name is Mayowa. I have 2 questions and then a comment. So my first question is, what happens to the bottles after they are sold back to the redemption centers? My second question is, groups like Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts that do trash cleanups, like how impactful is it to actually be invested in like trash cleanups? Like what is statistically, data-wise, what are our numbers in terms of how efficient such measures are? What kind of impact do they have, materially speaking? And lastly, my comment is just a little general. I'm just thinking about how after I graduated from college, I was working as an SAT tutor, but I wanted some extra money. So I started working as a guinea pig. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that, but you work for a pharmaceutical company doing phase 2 testing, and they pay you to be their guinea pig for the drug that they're testing. And I met a lot of people who had just gotten out of prison. That was actually the demographic that I had most encountered, and I was shocked. Yeah, I guess it's not that shocking, but it's I guess the people whose bodies are able to be put on the line are also people who are at the margins of society. I mean, that overlap makes sense. But I think about what makes someone choose what kinds of work they're going to do when they have certain options available to them. And I'm wondering about the choice of choosing canning over other options that are available and certain measures. I remember talking to someone who was doing guinea pigging, and they said it was a way for them to enter into the economy without like the legal economy in a way that they could as a formerly convicted felon. And so, and I haven't heard anyone mention that demographic as part of like a large demographic of people who can specifically. So my point is, I feel like the stigma around canners serves a greater purpose, and I'm really interested in how like keep maintaining a certain stigma around canners and canning helps to create a bigger nebulous cloud around this bill that seems to be hard to grasp. And I'm just kind of interested in that dynamic, if we can speak a little more to it. So
does anyone maybe how about the last part and then we'll go backwards, or whatever you want to say. This stigma is actually very interesting. Like what does it serve when there's this, when you could publicly look at somebody and then most people would just like, this person was, bad in some ways, right? Whatever it may be.
Right.
What does it mean for society when we kind of just can push them away and say, we don't need to care about them as much. They deserve this. Like,
exactly.
And talking about that?
They're actually doing work for us because they're actually serving us environmentally. Like they're helping us. They're doing work for us. But somehow we still use this stigma in a way to regulate something. It seems like it's regulatory. It seems like necessary for something. And that's why I was mentioning the bill. It seems to also have a way to impact how we think about how to manage or modernize the kind of legislation around this problem.
So the language that we use to advocate for why the bill is necessary is also an opportunity to reveal maybe that underlying prejudice that we have, right? So people don't have options, therefore they're guinea pigs for things that really benefit all of us in medicine and whatnot. Yeah. So any thoughts on that?
Well, Siyan, I think it's your work. Part of it is art, right? That this work is celebrated and beautiful, right? And if you haven't seen it yet, please take a look. But yeah, to hold it up is like, this is work. And work is holy. Work is good. Like people find meaning and are part of a bigger picture in their work. One hopes, right? That's what it should be.
And I also find that people want to be independent. People don't want to be dependent. People want to have the economic independence and do what they wish. I mean, like that's so innate. And so people who get out of prisons, they're trying to find work. But in a society that bar them from doing work, and how do we become more conscientious of what happens when, as a society, we bar certain people from getting into the labor market, and what that means.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're talking about is really interesting in terms of the way the bottle bill as a policy affects or responds to or has a relationship with these larger cultural forces about materials and work and capital and all this kind of stuff. I mean, and you talk about the function of stigma. I mean, in a sort of extractive society, like something has to be extracted from, So I think there is a functionality to systems that put people in that position to be marginalized and therefore bear these burdens, right? I think it's been remarked on about, like, I talk about this a lot. I think the system is quite beautiful. The bottle bill system is beautiful in the sense that the way it makes what Laurie's talking about, this participation in social responsibility and like care for each other, for materials, for society, it makes that type of participation extremely accessible. Like anyone can participate in it. And the notion that only marginalized people should participate in canning is part of the problem, right? So I think that's one of the forces arrayed against it. The forces that benefit from exclusivity itself are opposed to this because it, just by its nature, in a very simple way, opens pathways to not only economic empowerment, right, through earning income, but also participating in what could result in actual cultural transformation. Maybe I'll also address another part of your question, which is a little more technical, about what happens to the material after it's redeemed. Part of the answer is a little murky because it's returned back to the companies and it's their property that they can then do what they wish with. What I can say is that in general, bottleable material is a drastically more valuable recycled product than what passes through like your single stream system, your municipal recycling, whatever. And it's much, much, much more likely to be turned into new containers versus like downcycled or like glass crushed into asphalt or any of the sort of less efficient and sustainable practices that happen with recyclable material. Also, it stays in the United States, which is a big thing. The glass that's processed through the bottle bill is mostly cleaned and directly reused versus being crushed if it's well handled. It's a very well sorted waste stream, so it means that contamination issues that plague municipal recyclers don't affect it so much. And it's also a primary source for companies that have post-consumer recycled content requirements for their packaging. It's a key source for them to include, like because it's so clean and so viable, it's a key source for companies to buy recycled plastic that they can then turn into new packaging. So, I mean, we could get into a broader conversation about the efficiency, effectiveness of plastic recycling in general and the chemical aspects. I'm not really equipped to wade too far into that, but there are ambiguities there, and we could talk about maybe how plastic recycling isn't the best thing, period, and plastic not necessarily the most viable material, period. But as far as it goes, as far as recycling goes, the bottle bill handles it much more sustainably than municipal systems in general.
And I think to the question about funds raised for these groups, I'm no expert, jump in if you know, but I mean, it certainly sounds from every redemption center owner, and we've heard talk about it, that it is, it is one important source of, donations and funds for works of Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or other kinds of community groups. I one redemption center owner out in Long Island apparently somehow got the contract to clean up all the containers out of some, maybe it was a minor league baseball stadium or some local stadium, and it was tens of thousands of dollars, right? That because I guess the scouts are running around collecting the things, so they got the money. So not that it's the end all be all, but it's when kids are trying to or families are trying to raise money for those kind of community activities, it's one way that again the whole community can kind of be supportive in these little bits without it feeling like you only have to go to the very wealthy people to, make great big donations. It's little bits of things that people can give towards it. So it certainly seems like, and I don't run a center, but it certainly seems like it is important for those groups.
If there's one more thing I can just throw in the mix. I'm sorry. I think it's just important to mention. You talked about, this sort of informal layer, right? Like, I think we're talking about the deposit going up, everybody participating. How great would it be if everybody redeemed their stuff? You pointed out, Lonnie, that there's concerns in the canner community about what if everybody just jumps into this game and all of a sudden I can't pay my bills, because everybody's competing with me. So I think there's tensions on the social cultural side of this of what's the kind of bed we've made for ourselves here with 40 years of neglect that's created essentially an underclass of workers that are institutionalized into that position. And then if the institutional context changes, does that eradicate that sector of worker? That's a problem, right? So I think there's really deep questions of how do we manage. You may have heard the phrase just transition, right? This is something we work about, especially on the international level. We're part of an international alliance of waste pickers that works with people who do this type of work in other countries, where often they're much more organized, much more developed, much more involved, because often they have these huge dump sites and there's communities of thousands of people that live among the waste that's exported to other countries, right? And they not only have these acute issues in their lives, but also they have a community around them that they can organize with and create solidarity with and fight for these changes. So I think it's really key to include that line of thinking of just transition as we imagine these larger cultural transformations, not just this bill, but really where are we going as a society with this kind of stuff? Because it can't just be about the materials. It's also got to be about the social sustainability that we need to maintain so that Lonnie doesn't lose his job when the deposit goes up even higher, right? But maybe there's another job that can be created and Lonnie can have that one. So I don't have an answer to share, but I just think it's an important, this transition from informality to formality. And what is is there a benefit to having a system that is for people who fall into that informal space, either with or without their own initiative?
Yes.
Hi there, my name is Kim Cameron. I'm with the League of Women Voters in Portland County. And this is certainly a bill that the League in New York State supports very strongly, as well as the New York State Packaging Reduction Recycling Infrastructure Act. So a couple of things I think about, you were talking about how it needs to come back to a local level, how we need to get people engaged in seeing these bills get passed. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to bring it home. And for instance, I was at the county legislative meeting the other day, and Portland County passed a resolution in support of the New York State Packaging Reduction Recycling Infrastructure Act. And it is because it affects people in Portland County. And it affects them because our landfill is filling up. It is filling up 14 years ahead of schedule. And this is a massive bill that Portland County residents will have to pay when we have to open a new cell. So the county legislature, who don't really probably care about a lot of this stuff, they do care about the money. So I'm suggesting to everyone here, go back to your county legislature, go back to your city council, go back to your community and say, pass a resolution in support of these bills. And that is the way we can make our voice heard.
And there is a template resolution available if anybody's interested.
And our Tompkins County Legislature has indeed done that in the past, and probably be a good thing if we push them to do it again, because they probably would, but again, just one of many, many issues. And I guess we should state also, just so folks from Tompkins County know, that both our Assembly Member Anna Kellis and our State Senator Leah Webb are co-sponsors of this bill. So that's wonderful. We've gone to them with it over the years, and they are quite environmentally minded, as we know, if you follow their politics. Doesn't mean they don't need to hear from folks, just to be reminded that, they do have constituents that support it. But our struggle is not so much convincing our immediate representatives as it is, being part of the statewide effort to the places that.
And that your local legislators speak to their leaders and say, we want a good, strong bill. Because as you all know, if you've ever paid any attention to this stuff, at the end of the day, there'll be some behind closed door negotiation. And the stronger the bill is a reflection of how much heat is applied to this system. Elected officials are human barometers. They respond to pressure.
One of the things I realized since I started painting and really bringing my art and exhibiting to try to make some change in 2019 is that at that time I thought 10 cents at least minimum. It should be more, 10 cents. This is 2025. The cost of that really have risen a lot because of inflation. And I do agree, it should be at least 15 cents, if not more. And yet, I also talked to other ecological engineers, including Siyan, who I painted. She said, oh no, I fear that if it goes up to 10 cents, we'll have more competition because people wouldn't want to just throw it away, right? I feel like there's a lot of fear. There's always this fear, what if? And I personally feel that fear is our only barrier, really, to getting more for everyone. I know even 15 cents, if I know my local ecological engineer or somebody could benefit from it, I wouldn't want to keep it because it's really a lot of work to keep all these cans and then to have to find time and go get them redeemed. So I think realistically, I don't know if you share that sentiment. I don't think even at 15 cents that it will become a barrier for people who actually need the money because they really have a lot more endurance. But, I agree with you. And I think having an ambitious bill, if there's heat, it will still get passed, and 10 cents without heat would still not get passed. You know, I very much agree with that.
Why they're not asking for 15, because Senator May did say that.
Yeah, I mean, it's purely about what you find in most of the rest of the country that has bottle laws, right? Nickel or dime. What they consider to be the easiest legislative, what has the best legislative prospects. And still we don't have it. It's been a dime for 40 years. So just to give you an idea how hard it is.
So if it's been a dime in some places, are there canners making money in those places?
Well, in Oregon, very much so. The Oregon deposit went to 10 cents in 2018. We're connected with another socially engaged redemption center in Portland, Oregon, that we were organized with and do work with the International Alliance with as well. And yeah, they have a big community out there, lots of canners working. It's different in different places. Again, like we sort of made this bed. In Michigan, they've had a 10-cent deposit since the late 70s. And they have right now, I think, around a 90% return rate for the material. It's crazy high, but not a lot of canners because it started at 10 cents. So everybody just redeems their own stuff. So it depends on how and when and why. But again, we're in this situation now where the canners are there. So we've got to think of them as we approach the policy.
Yeah, just to add on Ryan's point, or when you go up to a dime, more containers will be redeemed by the people who purchased the product. So for the canner, there'll be fewer containers to redeem, Ecological Engineer, but they'll get more for it. And so when you do the numbers, it's sort of an interesting thing. When you do the numbers, there still will be more money in unredeemed deposits in the aggregate, even if there are fewer containers being redeemed. So that's probably why in Oregon, when you increase the deposit, the first year went up, their redemption rate went up 9%. It's roughly where New York's is now, went up roughly 9% in 1 year. But when you do the numbers, you drive the numbers, you can actually calculate this. We know there's 9.3 billion containers in New York that are covered under the law. There's another 2.4 billion that are not yet covered under the law. You do the math, you reverse engineer the whole thing. There's still going to be more money. It's just that Lonnie won't have to carry as much to the supermarket. So there, welcome.
Okay, you and then you. Please state your name.
Hi, my name is Nancy. I have two questions. One is that all of your comments make me realize that there's another whole layer to the economics of this that I have no idea about. If you say that 65% in New York State is redeemed, and they go to places other than the place that sold it, what is the stream of that nickel that I've paid to Wegmans that they never pay that nickel back? How does all of that work? Does anybody have any idea? So that's one question. The other question that I have, and I apologize because I think my question could impact people's income, but I wonder, because I also felt the lack when the redemption center right in Yonkers was closed, and I gotta drive 2 miles just to drop off some cans. Doesn't make sense either. Couldn't there be some sort of central drop-off point? I would love to be able to just drop off. So we are in a culture now in Ithaca where a lot of us very dutifully take our compost bucket to Property Extension and other places. So yes, we need elaborate legislative solutions. Sometimes the simplest solution is also the elegant one that can work in a community. Is there any thought, does it make any sense, am I being ridiculous, to think about some sort of localized drop-off point that was either agreed upon for the canners or just for us to then say, this is for the Girl Scouts, this is for the whatevers, this is for Catholic Charities. So that's my concern.
Let me just go to the first question first and then try and jump in. So they keep track. There's a way to keep track. You know, that every container that gets sold, there's a sales tax. The state knows how many containers get sold. They know what companies distribute them into the state. For the unredeemed deposits in New York, under the 2009 law, 80% of the nickels that are not redeemed go to the state. 20% goes back to the companies. So they get to pay for the cost of dealing with the program. So 80% of it goes to the state, which is around $125 to $130 million. And so roughly 25 million of it goes to the Environmental Protection Fund, the rest goes into the state general fund. So that's where that part goes. So sounded like you wanted a sure we can in Ithaca. Take it away, Ryan.
I'm all about it. Let's talk. No, I mean, you're not crazy at all. This is like, access is a big problem across the whole system. In New York City, it's a huge issue. I mean, you have sometimes, like, imagine taking a cart full of cans on the subway, right? It's just inconceivable. So in addition to like specifically trying to make life easier for canners, I mean, we're all about that. We want the system to be accessible to everyone. RVMs, mobile redemption, basic redemption centers, anything that you can think of. Like, another big thing about this unredeemed deposit is a lot of that money, 80% that goes back to the state, just kind of, some of it goes to the Environmental Protection Fund for other uses, some to the general fund. But one thing that is in the bill that's not a headline item, but that we're pushing for, is specific reinvestments back into the system. That's going to allow like grants for new redemption centers to be created in places where it's hard to access rent, and hopefully can incentivize some of these ideas that you're talking about. They can give resources to communities so they can plan out the systems that work for the people who live there. I mean, it's different in every place. What works in New York City isn't going to work necessarily in Ithaca. But there's got to be resources for people to figure that out and try things and take the time to develop them, and so that people can use them and they can be effective.
I just want to make one note. During my exhibitions, there was a woman who stopped by, and she's not from this country, and I forgot which country. I think it's Canada. And in those houses, there's like a different color bag that the resident there would put their cans and bottles in, and people collect them would know, okay, that's for me. And then they'll take it, and then put the bag back, or take the bag. I don't know what conditions the bags are in. I think that communities are very creative in if they want to be humane, and respectful of the people's work. So that's just an idea I want to share. And I think we addressed all your questions. I do know I forgot the second question you asked. I don't know if we addressed it. But when you remember, let us know.
Okay.
And yours? Your name?
My name's Carly. I use she, her pronouns. Happy to be here. My question, I have two questions. One is about the exclusion of dairy and fruit juice containers, like why the exclusion? And my second question is specifically for you, Ryan, around, you named pretty early on in the beginning that Sure We Can was really created by ecological engineers, and as the company has grown and shifted and transitioned, what is their decision-making power in the company? What is their, what place do they currently hold in the company? And yes, what power do they hold?
So on the dairy, 100% fruit juice, 100% vegetables. It's not the others. They're exempted because it's a political decision to not alienate people who are trying to have those beverages available to their children. So it is purely that.
How would that be isolated? I'm not making the connection.
Well, I mean, parents might want to have their children drink milk or have 100% fruit juice. And so having a deposit on that would create opposition to the idea of having those containers covered under the law. As you can tell by my sort of snarky response, I don't necessarily agree with that, but that is why it is there.
Even though the container is the exact same container as the fruit drink with the sugary carbonation mixed in, as opposed to straight up grape juice.
I will say there is a slight, maybe practical tone to this on dairy. Yes, we don't wash any of the materials we collect, but if we were dealing with milk, that would be a whole other thing in terms of smell and so that there is a logistical aspect to it as well. But not to say it's insurmountable. I would love to see that included and those ideas entertained. Thanks for asking the question about community representation and power in our organization. That's really important. I'm not a canner, so it's all the more important to me. We do have systems to ensure that the canners are empowered and have an active role in decision making. Our board is minimum 50% made up of canners. We also, in 2023, incubated the first association of canners in New York City at Sure We Can. It's not operated by Sure We Can, but we supported its creation. So that's a venue where canners can elect their own leaders, where they can raise and entertain issues that are priorities for them. And then the president of that organization also has a permanent spot on our board so that their voices are always included in the decision-making process. It would be a dream for me to give my job to a canner. Practically speaking, given the structure of the organization and the frameworks we operate in, that's not possible at this moment, but it's something that I would love to see happen. That's the way I would like to leave my job, is to give it to a canner.
Thank you. Last question, unless there's any more. Okay.
I'll be quick because I know everybody wants to be able to see the artwork. That I was going to say, the last place I lived, which was in Buffalo, our street had an informal process that you described similar to Canada, and that we just and your video really resonated for me in terms of the canner talking about the time management and the competitiveness, because there were some really serious go-getters out there every garbage recycling day at the right hour, because you had to get there at the right time. And so our neighbors we all just kind of informally, it just started happening that we would just separate and put it there so they didn't have to dig, so that's a way to support our canners now that we can do. If people, I'm not in the city, so I'm kind of it would be, the space would be too much for a canner to have to cover for out in the country a little bit, but that's one thing I just wanted to mention. And the other was just talking about the stigma. Essential workers are essential workers, and I love your artwork. I haven't, the few pieces that I had time to see before we sat down, you've got the home healthcare worker. What can be more essential than that? You've got the dishwasher. So you're highlighting, again, essential workers that we could not, they're doing the most important things for our day-to-day functioning. So I really love that about your artwork, that it just like you were saying, it shows such a deep humanity there.
Thank you. I also wanted, in my last exhibition, Lives of Three Canners, I wanted to show that, people weren't born and start, doing canning work, right? People had a job, and those jobs are so often so low wage that when you get older and you're not employable, you have to find other means of survival, supplementing your income. That's also something that I think we all care about, and Social Security is under attack right now, which I think is extremely scary for people. And if that doesn't mobilize everyone to do something, I really don't know what will. And I think we all care. I think by really getting this bill passed that seems to be stuck for the past 4 years and is so sensible for so long, I think it really will first get all of us organized, and second will really show that people are going to make some change. And I think the humanity in all this. Can you imagine all the people collect cans, start going to the voting booth because everybody's driving them or walking them there? I think we'll see a lot of changes. And Lonnie, you're very outspoken. You are, it sounds like you're someone who could organize other people. I think it would be wonderful if there is that opportunity for you.
The opportunity presents itself to where I can inspire other people to A, get up off of their hind ends and do something, and B, just push towards community, coming together. No matter what your social status is, no matter what your income is, your demographics don't really matter. What really matters is that everybody gets to sit down and eat at the end of the day. That's the most important thing. I mean, and we have great things here in Tompkins County. I mean, this place it's amazing. You know, people that are marginalized, people that are poor can come here. I mean, I came here almost 20 years ago, and I've been in and out since. But every time I come here, I usually have a pretty easy time, unless I'm looking for housing, to you know, just get what I need and do the things that I need to do. And I was going to ask you about prayer. I was going to wait till the panel's done, but are there any pushes towards canvassing and getting like signatures towards different? So yeah, I'd like to talk to you a little more about that later.
First, will be an office in Ithaca.
Okay.
If not sooner.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I'll look forward to that.
Yeah. And if there's any petition, anything that people can sign, or if anyone want to start a petition, I mean, what, like there are 20,000 students in Cornell, and I don't know how many are voting age. I mean, that's a huge population right there. And I wish more of them are able to stop by this exhibition, feel inspired, maybe do something. I know young people have a lot of energy. Yeah, well, you especially.
It's the middle.
I want to make sure you got that.
Well, thank you so much all for coming.
Bottleville@40.org.
Bottleville40.org. And if folks are local and want to be in on our statewide coalition, we meet every week. Please come talk to me afterwards. I work out of Catholic Charities, but we have folks from around the state, including these wonderful gentlemen and others working from an environmental point of view, from the industries that are affected. So yeah, a great group of folks, and we would always love more people at it. Can I read my quote?
Oh, sure.
So I wanted to read this in honor of Siyan, because her work, when we first met and we're talking about this whole exhibit, I had to dig this up. It reminded me of this quote from Bertolt Brecht. "Art is not a mirror held up to reality, but a hammer with which to shape it." Isn't that great? So I'm so grateful that her work is that hammer that's helping us shape society, and just grateful for artists who do that, and for all of you for coming to be part of it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
use
you,
the
Siyan.
hammer to make public policy.